Hey Dirt Magicians! Today we're going to be discussing the difference between determinate and indeterminate tomato varieties. We'll discuss the benefits of both to help you make the best choice of which of those two you want to grow. My name is Brianna. I've been studying plant health, soil health, integrated pest management, and been working in that field for the last 10 years. So I'm so excited to be here to talk all about this with you today. If you're new to our channel, our mission at Dirt Magicians is to help you learn from other gardeners, i.e. Dirt Magicians. So let us help you learn by peeking over the fence. And today's fence is Vern's yard. So let's dive in. Tomatoes are one of the tastiest vegetables when they're homegrown. I don't know if you've ever tasted the difference, but I don't even eat grocery store tomatoes anymore because growing in them in my vegetable garden has just kind of ruined it for me. It's like styrofoam versus a burst of flavor. And so many people love them that there are actually over 10,000 varieties because they just keep breeding new delicious flavors. And of those 10,000, they're still always split between those two categories, indeterminate and determinate. Also, please let me know in the comments which of the two you prefer or which varieties are your favorite because there's so many, I only know a few. All right, so let's get into determinate tomatoes. And the way I think about determinate is everything about them is predetermined. It's determined. So for example, it starts to grow up and then it stops at a specific height, usually around 4 feet, and then it bushes out. So it has a determined size always. It also produces all of its fruit within a few weeks of each other. So you kind of have a smaller gap, but you get lots of fruit all at once. So some common varieties of determinate include things like Rutgers, Roma, Celebrity, Dad's Breakfast, and Green Heirloom. This is also the type of tomatoes that we typically would can with. So when we talk about the difference of care between the two types, for determinants, we don't do a lot of pruning, whereas with indeterminate, we do a ton of pruning. If we do pruning, we're going to end up cutting out the flowers that would be our main fruit, as that plant only produces a certain number of flowers. That will actually reduce our fruit overall. We don't want to prune out things called suckers, which we do in indeterminate, and which I'll discuss afterwards. So the only pruning we do is when the plant's quite large, we want to remove some of the bottom leaves that are maybe touching the soil to prevent diseases like early blight and late blight. And then we might want to prune out a few leaves here and there to increase our airflow. And then in terms of staking, a tomato cage works great for these varieties. All right, so let's move on to indeterminate tomatoes. So indeterminate, the way I remember this is that it has an indeterminate or an undetermined amount of growth that it can do. So these guys vine and they can go up to 6 to 10 feet tall, depending on where we live and the climate that we have. They're also considered perennial in warmer climates like Southern California versus up here. They stop growing when the weather changes around September, October. So these guys need really sturdy supports because they get so tall and they're not able to do any of their vining themselves. So we need like really good stakes or string. So these guys actually need a lot of aggressive pruning. So we want to prune out many of the suckers, leaving one vine, unless of course we live somewhere that's hot enough that there's going to be enough energy for the plant to produce 2 vining plants, but usually no more than that. We also want to remove all of the lower leaves once, of course, the plant is established, so that the leaves aren't touching the ground. As leaves touching the ground are more prone to diseases, it's easier for insects to crawl up, those kinds of things. And so some typical varieties of indeterminate tomatoes include things like Sun Gold, Sweet Million, Brandywine. So what are the benefits and drawbacks of these two different variety types, and which one should you grow? For me, the short answer is a bit of both, because that gives me the most flexibility to use them in different ways. So some of the benefits to our determinate varieties is they produce most of their fruit all at once. So I get a larger amount all at once, which is perfect for canning. And so typically determinate varieties are used in canning. One of the drawbacks of determinates, though, is that because it bushes out, it takes a lot of space in the garden. However, this can be countered because it bushes. It also doesn't have very deep roots, so I can grow it in a 5-gallon pot and just totally take that out of my garden. So for the indeterminate varieties, these don't produce as many fruit all at once, but they keep producing fruit. So I get smaller amounts, but I get more fruit over a longer period of time, which I kind of love just for snacking on. These are deeper rooted, so they do need to be in the garden, but because they're determinate in vining, we can put them a lot closer together. And there's just so many more different varieties of indeterminate tomatoes versus determinate. So most gardeners end up growing the indeterminate variety for that reason. One last fun fact about tomatoes is that they're botanically actually a fruit, not a vegetable. Now you've got something to tell people at garden parties, right? Well, Dirt Magicians, that's the end of our video. If you gain something valuable from this, please, fruit, the subscribe button and like our video, as it helps up-and-coming content creators like us. Also, in the comments, please let me know what your preferred is, determinate versus indeterminate, and your favorite varieties within those, as I love finding out more tomatoes that I should try and grow. Okay, we'll see you next time.